Welcome to our sound for video session. This is a noisy one. Apologize in advance. And we do have our technical director here, Emma. And the reason we have Emma here in the frame today is because we're going to do kind of a behind the scenes look at things here. We did do a kind of preview last night where we were kind of working through all of the kinks and the settings. Had a good time with that. So thanks for those of you that joined for that. That was a good time. And we'll go into a little bit more depth this time. So let's go ahead and start with I think we're going to start with the tour, and then we will come back, take any questions that you have, and then jump into our question and answer from there. So, all right, let's make the transition. So we have a couple things we have to switch. The hair light just went out.
I can't see the monitor, so.
Yeah, this is a mess here. Okay, do you have my lav mic now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and take our wireless camera here. So we're using the Panasonic GH5. Get this situated here. And I'm just going to kind of run through things step by step here. So first off, we have our mixer here. We're using the, this is the SQ5 from Allen and Heath. It's a digital mixer. And a lot of good reasons to use this one. The nice thing about this one is that it has a bunch of built-in effects. So for example here, if I select a channel and I go to processing here, I can go ahead and jump in and set all these different things. So I've got a gate, I've got a high pass filter, I've got a compressor, and then I have an EQ over here with high mids, and low frequencies. So I can do a whole bunch of different things here, but kind of one of the coolest things in terms of this particular setup, and this is the nice thing about these kind of newer generation mixers, is that I've got a digital AES output on a single XLR cable, and that runs from the mixer over to the Canon C200, which is our main camera right over here. And the nice thing about the Canon C200 is you can switch the XLR inputs to be digital AES inputs. So what that means in practical terms is that all of the analog amplification and all of the conversion to digital happens right here in the Allen and Heath. And then it just passes that digital signal over to the Canon C200. So I'm not relying on the Canon C200 for anything except to take that digital stream, line it up with the video, and send it over to the video switcher. So that is that's been pretty good so far. All right, over here we have our multi-view monitor. So this is what Emma uses. Now today's setup is a little awkward because we're both sitting on this kind of the same side of the desk. She can't see this very well, but just in terms of what we have here, on the left-hand side we have our preview. This is what will be up next. This is what's currently in the program, so this is what you're seeing right now. And then we have each of our sources. So here's the main camera, the C200. Here we have a Mac where she's actually doing the switching, and we did start the live stream, right?
Yes, we are live.
We are live, okay. Here's where we have the chat that comes in, and she can use the keys to put those up on the screen. Here's our wireless camera that we're using right now. And then here is our agenda and the question and answer. So those are the 5 sources we're using here today. All right, you will see a bunch of these little red boxes all over. Let me just make sure we're in focus here. This is a 12G cross. This is made by a company called Decimator, and what this is it takes either an HDMI or an SDI signal up to 4K, up to UHD, and technically it is 4K, it's DCI 4K. And it will convert either the HDMI or the SDI to the other, and in this case we're coming in via HDMI on almost everything, and then we convert to SDI to go to the switcher. And not only does it do that conversion from the type of connector and the signal you have to send over SDI versus HDMI, but it also does frame rate conversion and scaling. So for example, right here we have our iPad, which has the agenda and the questions on it. And this comes out of the iPad at 1080p. In fact, we can see right here. It'll say on the screen. I don't know if you can actually see that. It's probably a little hard to see, but it's coming in at 1080p, 59.94 frames per second. And what we need to send over to the switcher is actually UHD, so 3840 by 2160 at 29.97 frames per second. And we chose that frame rate because that's what our main camera shoots at. So that's what these cross conversion boxes do. They're also scalers and frame rate converters. So we have to do the same thing coming out of the chat computer, out of the main computer, and out of the iPad. Now, if you use something like an ATEM Mini Pro, which we have right here, which we're not using today, this has all of that built in. To some extent, it can't do it in 4K or UHD, but anything HD up to 60 frames per second and lower, it does all that. But once you go to 4K, that's where you're going to be in a bigger switcher and using cross converters like this. Okay, so there's that explanation. In terms of audio monitoring, this is a breath of fresh air for us here. This is this is by Little Labs. It's called the Little Labs Monitor. Interesting thing, it's just a box that has two balanced inputs on the back. Actually, it has balanced and unbalanced inputs on the back, stereo. And we can get a feed from the switcher, the program audio, and bring that here. And that's what Emma is listening to right now. So that allows her to hear exactly what is coming in through the program or going out to the program and then going to the encoder and streaming over to the internet. So that's what we're looking at here. Let me pop us over onto that screen real quick. Okay. All right. So there's that. Let's see here. Here's Emma's. We have a mic for Emma because sometimes I ask her questions. So I think we're going to start doing that more in the future here. Mic for me. Over on the, just to come back to the mixer for just a second here. See if I can get in close enough here. We do have 4 channels set up today. So we have my main mic, which is the Earthworks. We have Emma's mic, which is the Shure MV7. We have the Audio Limited A10, which is the wireless mic I'm using right now. And then we have the phone up here, which is what we use to feed in the audio at the start and the end of the program. That comes into this stereo input right here. So that's how we have the audio configured. Here's sort of a wider look at things. Kind of step back, try not to trip on anything. We'll come back to the lighting in just a minute. We did have a lighting failure here. We have one light that's running on battery right there. That's actually a hair light to add a little bit of separation of me from the background. And the problem that we had with it is the battery just ran out. So I'd rather run that on AC power if we could, but I haven't invested in the cabling. So Emma, I'm going to sneak by you on the right-hand side there. Let's show you the closet here. So this is all going to move. And let me just kind of adjust the exposure here. This is the noisy part. This is why today's live stream is a lot noisier than usual. On the bottom there, right, let me just see, are we in focus? This is the switcher. So it's an ATEM 2 ME Production Studio 4K. And this is, of course, a 4K switcher, so it can handle up to, I believe, 2160. Can't remember if it's 12G or 6G, but the inputs on it are, there's one HDMI input and there are some number of SDI inputs. I think it's 20. We could see right here, actually. 12. There's 18, 19, yeah, 20. So input number 1 is shared between HDMI and SDI, and the rest are SDI inputs. So you can bring in a lot of things. And as we showed you before, back over here on the computer, Emma's using the software control app over here to control the switcher. We do not have the physical control panel. All right, coming back over into the closet here. Just above the switcher, we have our HyperDeck. So you can see we have 2 SSD drives in that. And this is where we can play back material. So when Rob Christensen sent over a video about a month or month and a half ago. We actually played it back from that. And that'll work with the ATEM Mini Pro, but it also, of course, will work with the ATEM 2ME here. All right, and we have a couple of Ethernet switches above that, nothing too exciting there. And then coming out of the ATEM, let me just kind of get around the corner here, sorry for the wobble. This is our hardware encoder. This is the Tascam VS-R265. Getting kind of an echo here in the closet. And so this takes the output from the switcher and via Ethernet streams it directly over to YouTube. So we're not using any sort of encoding app on the computer. It's all being done in this hardware here. There are a lot of things that are going to change here. This is a mess here in the closet, and I'm embarrassed to show you the cables off to the left because it's just a massive spaghetti. But this is all going to move, so we're going to move this out of this closet and actually over into a different room here. And there are a few reasons for that. Number one, it'll make it a lot easier to access the back of the switcher, because right now it's just kind of stuffed here in the closet and it's really hard to get to. But the bigger thing, I think, is that it will also get all of this noise out of the streaming room, if you will, and make things a lot quieter. So that's what we're looking at there. All right. Coming back out, let's take a look at the lighting setup here. Kind of adjust our exposure. So the key light, which you see right there, sitting over the computer screen, that is a D&O 180W. It's an LED panel with a softbox on it. And the reason I use that one is that it's relatively thin, even with the softbox, and color quality is pretty good, and there is no fan on it. I'm looking for as many things as possible to bring into the streaming studio that do not have fans. And so I really like that one for that purpose. As you saw before, we have our hair light up here. This is the Lupo Smart Panel, and I have it on a GorillaPod just sort of hanging from the, right now from the cloud up here. That one's a little problematic because we do need to swap out the batteries for that from time to time. This one, it looked like it was good at the start, but evidently it was, that's an older battery, so. And then over here, just to bring up the ambient level in the room, we have a Lupo Super Panel aimed up at the ceiling. Kind of see underneath it here. So that's just aimed up at the ceiling to bring the ambient level up so that it's not so, didn't want it to be too dark. Just kind of get the look that we're going for. Of course, we have our very cool salt lamp here. And then over here in the corner, just to kind of put this splash of color and create some color contrast, we have two Aperture MCs, one down on the Pelican case down there, another one hidden back here, and just putting that, that splash of color up on the wall there. All right, what did I miss? Oh yeah.
Over here?
There's not anything happening over here at the moment, but let me just kind of give a tour here. We've talked about these in previous streams. Here we do have our Shelford channel and our DBX286S. These are both basically vocal channel strips, or that's how we use them at least. And typically I run my microphone through this because it has, there's a high pass, a compressor, or sorry, an EQ and a compressor. And it is a beautiful sound. DBX is kind of basically the similar thing. Controls are a little bit different. It also has a de-esser and some other effects. But the idea is that, and this is a little dark. Let me see if I can, there we go. Make that a little easier to see. So typically we'll be using those and probably running those into the SQ5. Today, for the wireless channel here that you're hearing right now, we actually are running that through the Sound Devices 888 and then running the 888 line out into the SQ5 right up here. The reason we're doing that is that my wireless setup is all in here in the super slot system. I didn't want to completely take that apart. So rather than take that apart and feed the wireless directly into the SQ5, we're coming through the 888 and just feeding a line level out of the 888 into the Allen and Heath. Oh, searing. Let's go ahead and pull that down again. All right. Trying to think. Have we had any questions come up in the chat yet that we need to talk about? Okay, if you guys have questions, go ahead and hit us at Curtis Judd Audio in the chat and let us know what you'd like to learn more about this setup here. I think the reason I should say, the reason I did this, let's go ahead and, no, actually, let's stay here. Let's wait if there are any questions, because if there are, I want to be able to show what we're talking about. But the reason I did this is not because I think that navel gazing is a really good idea necessarily. The main reason we did this, and I've actually always been a little bit uncomfortable kind of flexing online, and that's not really the purpose of this. The idea is, and I've had people accuse me of that. So for example, when we did our live stream setup video on the main YouTube channel last probably March or so, a bunch of people accused me of, I hate those YouTubers that just flex online. It's so nauseating, or whatever they said. This is not really the purpose of that. The reason that people have continued to ask questions along these lines, and I think really there's kind of an opportunity to learn some things and maybe learn from someone else's experiences. So obviously this is a ridiculously expensive setup for someone who's a hobbyist live streamer. Obviously, it doesn't make sense for that. And kind of the context for why we do it is, number one, I think the main thing is it's going to help with our future course development. It will make it easier, so we can essentially live switch while we're recording instead of having to do quite as much post work. And also it'll help with the live streams as well. There have been a lot of things on live streams that I've wanted to do for a long time that just weren't very easy to do in a lot of ways, and I think this helps simplify some of that. And in fact, we first started streaming in 2015 with the launch of our first course. And so we started live streaming then, and it was basically, we just called them question and answer sessions back then. And I would basically get on Google Hangouts and just sit there and wait for people to show up. And and if they did, we could talk, and we could work through whatever challenges they were facing. And that was kind of cool. There was some momentum at the first, but then nobody really had questions for a while. And so I kind of moved to a schedule where instead we just produced videos, like little how-to tutorials every week. And those were the sound for video sessions. And then it became clear after a while that there were a lot of pent-up questions and need to kind of come back to this type of format. And so we've kind of changed over time. So the first live streams were really horrible, like in terms of from a technical standpoint. I was just using the inbuilt webcam, and I don't even think I even set up lights. I think it was just really pretty hacky looking. I would usually set up a microphone, but in any case, we've come a long way. I think really kind of improving the production value of the live stream really started probably late 2019 when we got the first A10 Mini. And that was pretty cool. That helped a lot. So, and now we've kind of evolved. We're evolving it to this point here. And the idea here again is all of this was purchased with business proceeds. It's meant to make the business better and to provide some additional things. So, all right. Do we have any questions that we want to put up? We do. Okay. We're going to go ahead and put something up on the screen here.
You want me to say it?
No, I want you to put up on screen.
Okay.
Okay. What does relatively thin mean for the softbox? Oh, it means it doesn't take up a lot of space. This is probably 6 inches deep right here. That's what I mean by that. So you can see here that basically the desk is up against a window. So we didn't have a lot of space behind there, so I needed something low profile. So that's where something like an Aperture, as much as I love Aperture lights, the Light Dome 2 was not going to work. It's just too big, too imposing. And so I needed something that was smaller, but could still soften the light up. So that's what that one meant. Can't the 888 output AES rather than using the beautiful SQ5? It can, and we could certainly use the 888. The reason we're using the SQ5 is that the SQ5 I think is a little easier for live. It's a bigger control surface. Either one would work. You're right. It could put out AES from the 888 directly to the Canon C200, but it's nicer to have these linear faders and to have big dedicated mute buttons and kind of a much larger screen to work with. So given the chance, I would always choose a mixer like this. And since we're here, we can do that. if I'm on location or if I'm doing a corporate piece, there's a good chance that I would probably just use the 888 for that instead, just because of the ability to transport it would be pretty nice. So that's a good question, fair question. So how much does all that cost, and how much would it cost to create something with much the same functionality but without all being industrial professional grade? Well, that is a fantastic question, Mark. I'm glad you asked that, because you could actually do a lot of this with encoding software. So OBS or Ecamm Live or vMix or Telestream. There are just a lot of different options out there that are essentially encoders that run on your computer. So it's software instead of hardware. Now, you can buy a Camlink 4K. You could even do it in 4K. A Camlink 4K runs $120 or $30 US. So pretty straightforward. In fact, I should talk about that. So we do have one of those here. And in fact, before we were using the Tascam encoder, which I showed you, the last few weeks we were actually using this, just a Camlink 4K. I think it's $120 or $130. There's an HDMI input on one side, USB output on the other side. Incredible little device. I highly recommend those. And they're back in stock now. They were hard to get for a long time there, but they're actually back in stock now. So you can do a lot of that. Now, the limitation you're going to have is you're not going to have 20 inputs with something like that. So you're going to have, however many inputs you're going to need. Now, if you're running something like Ecamm Live, a lot of this stuff you wouldn't need. The chat is built into that software. You can share your screen from Ecamm Live, so you wouldn't necessarily need that. So you would just need a Camlink essentially for each camera, as opposed to each different device like we have here. So it's a lot less expensive that way. Now, the reality is, and we'll actually have some questions on this a little bit later, but the reality is that your computer has to be beefy enough to handle it. So if you've already got a pretty powerful computer, like a desktop, then that's probably going to be fine. Laptops are going to be a lot dicier when you're trying to do something like this. And in fact, that's a question I hear a lot is, well, how come I can't use Ecamm with my MacBook Air? And the MacBook Air is meant to be small, light, and portable. It's not meant to do as much work as live streaming requires. And so encoding, especially like a 4K stream, puts a pretty heavy load on your computer. And I'm not 100% sure with both OBS and, say, Ecamm, whether it's using GPU or just CPU, but I think it's using a good bit of both. But you need a computer that's pretty substantial to be able to handle that. So that's one way you could approach it. Of course, if you're just trying to live stream and you're not trying to be all, fancy with it, you can live stream from your phone, for heaven's sakes. I mean, you have the camera built in, you have the Wi-Fi, you have everything you need. And so that's definitely possible that way too. So there are a lot of different approaches. Software is usually a much less expensive approach than you just need a capture device like the Camlink. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, next question. Why the external decoder instead of using a computer? Great question. We can use a computer. There are a few things that I had in mind there. Number one, you can see here, so for the example, the MacBooks will start huffing and puffing if you make them the encoder. They're made to be portable. So as soon as you start putting that kind of load on them, those fans are going to kick on, and that just makes more noise. So that's one reason. A desktop computer, of course, can do it, and you don't have any issues. In most cases, at least, it can handle that. But in this case, what we wanted here is something that was dedicated. I wanted to, here, for example, I've got one computer dedicated to the chat. I've got another computer that, at least presently, and this may change, is dedicated to controlling the switcher, but it's also, we've got our YouTube studio here, so that's how we're streaming. We're keeping track of things there, and we actually start and end the stream here. But we also have some things on screen that we can share there. So we're using that for that purpose. And then, of course, we also have the iPad here. That's going to have our agenda and all our question and answers on that as well. So once you start piling all that onto a single computer while you're streaming, things get a little crazy. So having dedicated hardware that its only job is to do one thing and do it well, that's where hardware makes sense. Now, that's not a cheap encoder either. Those run $2,000, I think it was. But again, that's kind of the idea of having a dedicated thing. Do you have special considerations to grounding all this nice equipment? Goal on electrical protection and eliminating hum interference. Yes, there are a few things that we do. Everything is running through Furman power conditioners. You can see there's one of them right here. That's the top rack unit here. So all of this equipment is running through one of those. We have another one down here on this lower rack. I don't know if you can see that very well. Let's see if we bring that up. There's another one down there, and then also on the rack in the closet, there's another power conditioner there. So that's one thing that we're doing. This is a relatively new home. Actually not that new. It was built in 2005, 2006. And so, we've tested all the grounding. The grounding's good. So we're not bypassing any of that. Anytime we have another power strip, we actually have another one under the desk here. I don't know if you can see that. That's also a Furman. It's also got some EMI and RFI. Obviously it's grounded and it's filtered. So we are doing some things to protect all that equipment, as you say. Which version of the decimator are you using? I'm looking for some SDI converter so I can connect my Shogun and monitor and use a camera switching feature. Andre, we're using the 12G Cross, which is the newest, I believe that's the newest cross converter from Decimator. It's not cheap, but it does a really, really good job. Been very happy with them. In fact, we'll talk about that a little bit more in our question and answer session, but it's called the 12G Cross. Now, if you're just working with HD, there are less expensive ways to get some good cross conversion, including those from Decimator. But that's the one that does up to 12G, so that's going to be up to DCI 4K. And you can see, let me actually just show a couple things here on this. Can you hold up the end for me on that? I'm going to bring up the exposure. Okay, so let me just run through things. So this is an SDI input up to 12G, so that's going to be, again, up to DCI 4K, overexposed there. Bring that down. And then we have 4 different outputs, and all of these can be run through scalars, and I think, in fact, they're in pairs, so I can run these through one scalar and these through a different scalar. And then here we have a Genlock input, and then on the other side we have 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, one's an input and one's an output. So you can cross convert either way. So you can go from SDI to HDMI or HDMI to SDI. And again, it does all of that scaling as well. So it does a whole bunch of stuff in one box. We actually bought our first one of those. We bought early this year, shortly after it came out. Just came out this year, in fact. And we were actually using it to take the output from the A10 Mini Pro and convert that to SDI for a couple of different feeds. One to go back to the HyperDeck for recording, one to go to our our multi-view monitor over here. And then we had another one going to a confidence monitor. I don't have it up right now, but I often will have a confidence monitor sitting right here underneath the camera, so I know at least what I look like, or how goofy I look, I guess is the best way to say it. All right, thanks for that question, Andre. Have you seen Caleb Pike's recent video about the ultimate streaming desk setup? Any thoughts on it? I haven't watched that one yet. I saw it's in my watch list, my watch later list, I guess technically it's called on YouTube. So I don't have any thoughts to share on it yet, but just seeing the thumbnail, it was pretty clean. And you can see, obviously, this is not pretty clean. Now, I think Caleb's doing kind of approaching that different. So he does the Camera and Flask show along with Jem Schofield, and I apologize, I don't remember the other fellow's name. But so that's a pretty straightforward one. Like, each of them are in a 1080p box, and the A10 Mini Pro works really well for that. We're trying to accomplish some other things here, so in any case, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Are you still editing from that desk position? Do you suffer from TMS, too much stuff, creating reflective surfaces and not ideal positioning to listen to your monitors? Yeah, you can see right now we only have one of the monitors out. The other one has to actually be moved for our live streams. It normally would sit where Emma's pointing. Yes, so basically, when we do our live streams, there is a production that it takes some time to get things set up. I can probably do it in about 20 minutes now, but it does take some time. So would I love to have a dedicated space just for the live stream versus the edit suite? Yes, I would. I don't have the means to do that at the moment, though. So, but yeah, it's a great point, Peter. Definitely can be a problem there, and there is some time involved in setting up and breaking down. All right, Antonio, I didn't see any NAS, network attached storage. Do you use one, and what about safety backups? Do you know the tau? Do you know the tau of backup? Don't you? I'm not sure what the tau of backup is specifically. But our strategy is we do have some, it's not network attached storage, but it's Thunderbolt RAID storage. It's basically underneath that monitor over here. I'm not going to try and get back there. It's ugly, and our cable management is still a work in progress. So, but yes, we do have a RAID 5 array down there. We also have two external working SSDs. So a lot, like for example, when I'm working on a YouTube video for the week, that goes on one of the SSD drives. They're NVMe SSDs. They're super, super fast, and they just make the edit process a lot smoother. So the longer term storage goes to the RAID 5, and then the kind of the working drives are directly attached to the computer via Thunderbolt. Now, I should say we also have a cloud backups service, so we're using Backblaze, and so that backs up all of those devices on an ongoing basis. So it just does that kind of in the background and uploads all of our files that way. And I'll have to look up the tau of backup. Aren't you involved in software development? Might that be why you prefer hardware encoding? Yeah, I am off. Yeah, my day job, I work for a software company. I've been involved in software engineering and development for a long time. And I guess that's a funny thing to say, Thomas, but yes, I think the main reason really is I just wanted something dedicated. I looked into actually buying a rack mount PC to do the encoding, but by the time I got something that was spec'd well enough, that was quiet enough, well, actually, the Tascam encoder is not quiet. It has a fan in it. It has a high-pitched whine. You're actually probably hearing it. It's actually, that's three things. That's the encoder, the switcher, and the hyperdeck all just make a racket. So that's another reason why they're moving out to, as I mentioned before, to a different room. So yeah, I just by the time I did the research, I finally decided, you know what, let's just get a dedicated encoder. That makes more sense for what we're trying to do. Yeah, it was 2000. Well, actually, we got it on sale for $1,500. They had a holiday special. We just bought it a couple weeks ago. But that was, in the end, that ended up costing about the same as what we had spec'd out for a rack mount. And frankly, I did not want to maintain another computer. I just don't have time for that. So I think it was a little more straightforward. So yeah, I guess in some respects, yeah, because I know software, I preferred hardware. All right, next up, Jason says, the SQ5 reminds me I'm on the lookout for a small format digital mixer, maybe 8-channel, and less than $1,000. Does such a product exist? Good question. I don't know. If any of you do know, sound off in the chat. Let us know for sure. The SQ5, interestingly, went up in price since I bought it. I bought it when it first came out in late 2018, I think. Can't remember when it was. Maybe it was late 2017. Had it for a while, but I got it when it first came out. It was $2,500, and it's since gone up in price to $3,000. So I don't know about a $1,000. It could. I would look at Allen and Heath first. They don't have cheap stuff, but they do make really good stuff. They're used a lot in live production. So if anyone else has input for Jason, definitely let him know. How much of this setup stays as it is, and how much gets broken down and shipped off each time for your commercial work? Are there any parts you double up on? So I haven't started using this yet for commercial work. For commercial, or for my day job, we're doing remote stuff right now. What I would like to do is start setting up so that we have remote encoders, and then we can stream all of those here, and I can record everything here and then do the post here and kind of direct it in real time. And we did one session like that, but we just used Riverside.fm, so an online service, a cloud service, I should say. That went okay, and the problem that we had is getting the equipment out to the people that are going to be involved in the interviews and having them set it up is proving to be a challenge. So I even just sent this first time I said, okay, you guys have webcams, we'll just use those. And I sent USB microphones out to them. And with respect, these guys are not audio people or AV people at all. And I was pretty insistent, okay, we need to have the microphones closer. We need to use something other than just your laptop microphone. And so we did that, and that helped. One of the guys, I said, okay, let's move the microphone up closer, and I kind of spent probably 15 minutes online with him, helping him kind of tune that. And, you know, once we did the post-production and I got it over to the marketing department, they said, well, we don't like that there's a microphone in the frame. And I was like, you know, I had to explain to them, look, we can do it without the microphone in the frame if you want, but the reality is it's going to sound a lot worse and it's going to lose the audience really quickly. And they eventually kind of got it and backed down on that. The other guy that was involved in the interview insisted on having his microphone out of the frame, and he sounded horrible. And so we're still trying to find a good solution for that. It's just really hard when you're working with people that aren't used to AV. So short answer to your question, Mark, to get back on topic, I don't usually move this stuff around. The streaming stuff I don't move around. It's the production stuff when I'm going to do an edited piece. That's when I haul stuff around. So it's not usually this stuff. It may be you know, like the cameras here, but it's not the switcher and all that business. Have you checked how much EMF radiation the electronics may be present in that room? With the latest setup, I have not. So I do have actually an EMF, a device that measures EMF of different sorts, and I have not brought it down here recently. So I'll need to do that to get a sense for that. Fortunately, we don't spend a lot of time in this room with all of this gear on. And as I mentioned before, we'll be moving the switcher rack out of this room, so that'll kind of reduce some of that as well. But yeah, it's a good point, and it is a concern. Tell me about your chair. Okay. I also work from home, so this is not just my edit area here, but it's also where I work all day long, so I spend probably 12 hours a day on and off throughout the day on this chair. This is a Hog, H-A-G. I don't remember what it's called, Capisco, I think. And it has a sort of a wool cover on it. It's supposed to be super ergonomic. I actually find it, you know, a lot of people have different kind of goals for what they're trying to accomplish. Let me lighten it up here a little bit. Different goals for what they're trying to accomplish with a chair. And a lot of people kind of approach it as, hey, I have to do 10-hour workdays or 12-hour workdays. I want something that's comfortable. I don't really kind of approach it that way. I approach it a little differently. My thinking is I want something that is supportive, and I don't want it something that I can just sink into and just stay there all day. I want to get up every at least 30 minutes or so. And so this one works pretty well for me. It sits really high, and it's comfortable for me, for my purposes. So I'm not, again, if you're looking for something that you can kind of sink into and spend all day there without moving, this is not the chair for you. If, on the other hand, you're looking for something that's, you know, pretty supportive of your back, if you sit right, but also stays cool in the summer, this is a pretty nice option for that. Roland, so how does this new, more extensive setup task your air conditioning? Good question. So a couple of things. Again, the long-term plan, actually this week we have the kind of flight case, the roller case rack that will arrive that sits at the baseboards and heats the room. And frankly, I wouldn't even need a heater in this room if we were running this equipment all the time. Even just the computers keep it pretty warm in here. So it doesn't really tax you know, in the winter time, it doesn't really tax things too much. And then in the summer, once we get that, the switcher rack out of here, I think we're going to be just fine. It stays pretty nice and cool down here. So hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, if you're in most spaces, you're going to tax things a little bit. Hello from Bulgaria. Are windows near desk good for audio? Probably not. No, probably not, but it's the only room I had, so I'm making do with what I have. You can see we do have some acoustic treatment back in the corner there. We have a bass trap. We have another one over here that's normally up against that wall in that corner. We have some more bass traps here, more corner traps, some on the walls. We have the ceiling clouds, a couple of those. So basically I worked with an acoustician to design the best that we could for this particular space, and that's what we came up with. And no, ideally it would be best to not have windows, I think, but we do. So we're just doing the best we can. No adjustable height work surface. In fact, it is an adjustable height work surface. However, because of the way things are set up, I cannot adjust it. I could if I move that light out of the way and just make sure that I don't hit the camera. This is actually a desk that'll go up and down. However, I have it set pretty high, and my chair is set pretty high, so I can sit at it, but I can also stand for short periods of time, so that ends up working out pretty nicely. On my church live stream today, I was getting a bad slap echo when I panned the mic 1 and 2 inputs on my client's ATEM. I feed them a stereo mix from my mixer. Stephen, we got your question. When I took away one channel, no delay, didn't have any sync delay going. Is there a setting for making the mic into a stereo input? Yeah, we got your question. We'll get to that in just a little bit here. Duncan says, I love Earthworks mics. Which one are you using? We have 2 of them here. This one is the SR314. That's my main mic there. And then back there, we're not using it today, but that is the new Earthworks Icon Pro. We actually included that one in our live stream last week, and we'll be doing a full review of that one in a little bit here. How are we on time, Emma?
12:42.
Oh, we probably better get to the Q&A. Okay, we're going to go to the Q&A, and then we'll come back to the chat a little bit later. So I'm going to switch things over here. Go ahead and put this camera down for now. Let's see here. Okay. All right, let's get back into the question and answer. All right, first up we have from Dominic. I have an SM7B running into a MixPre 3.2 and love the preamps on it. I also have an audio interface connected to my iMac for external speakers and headphones. I'd love to be able to set my Mac up to use one device to both listen to audio and to run recordings in. My interface has a 1/4-inch XLR combo line-in connection. Am I echoing or something? You're hearing that in the microphone at all?
No.
Okay. All right. I guess it's just, I think it's reverberating in the closet.
Yeah.
My question is, can I somehow connect the MixPre to my audio interface and have it pass my voice into the Mac as a recording device while still being able to hear myself in audio from the Mac on the headphones, external speakers using the interface? The answer is yes. Yeah, you could feed line out from the MixPre 3 into your interface. I'd probably get a DI box to convert it to a balanced signal just so you don't pick up any interference along the way. But once you do that, the output of the DI will be XLR, and you can go in line level into your audio interface that way. Now, I would warn you against trying to monitor yourself in the audio interface while you're recording the MixPre. You're going to get some latency there. It might prove a little bit difficult to do, but if you want to monitor directly, then you can plug into your MixPre while you're recording your own voice. So that'll be the challenge. So if you're always going to be recording something online, for example, with other people, if you've got your headphones on in the interface, you're going to hear some latency. So there's going to be kind of a delay echo effect. So you're going to have to be careful about that. But yeah, otherwise it should work. So thanks for that question, Dominic. Next up from JH, you always seem so comfortable and well prepared. How much pre-show prep do you do? And what do you think is the challenging thing about a weekly live stream? As always, thanks for all you do to inspire us and keep us informed. Well, that's kind of you to say that. I didn't feel very prepared. I don't feel very prepared on a lot of them. Pre-show prep, it really depends on the episode. Some of them take a lot longer than others. in this particular case, this one took a lot of hours to get ready for, and even now I feel like it's not very polished. But this was also kind of time invested in, the whole overall setup and the whole system. So I don't know if you want to count that stuff, but typically on a week, if we're teaching some new concept, then I need to dig in a little bit more. Last week, for example, we were working on the live stream setup, and we were supposed to do some demos of DaVinci Resolve, and those ended up being a lot lighter weight than I had hoped. So obviously I didn't put enough preparation in last week, but the idea is that once we get this set up and kind of settled in and ready to go, that going forward, we can really start focusing on getting back to the things that I think that are most important to people, talking about how to use DaVinci Resolve, how to use, various things. So that's the thinking there. So thanks for that. Next up from Rob, I'd be interested in hearing what EQ and compression plugins versus hardware people are using in their live streams. Great question. We are not using software. We use it. We're doing all of our live processing with hardware. But if in the chat, if you guys have any particular software you're using for doing any sort of processing while you're live streaming, let us know. I don't know if the A10 Mini, the processing in there is considered hardware or software. I think it's hardware with software settings. But in any case, good question. Thanks for that, Rob. Also, Rob says, I finally picked up Isotope RX Elements. Wow. Any chance you might do a more formal beginner's course on that software package? That's a great idea. Hadn't considered it. I was thinking of doing an RX course, but then I got scared because it's so vast that I didn't end up pursuing that. But maybe going with Elements would be a better idea. That would be a lot more kind of manageable. So good idea. Thanks for that, Rob. Dick asks a question. Maybe you can answer one question. What was your argument to choose the Decimator 12G Cross and not the Blackmagic equivalent? In the stream yesterday, you say you bought 5 Decimators because all the other Switch products are Blackmagic. I am curious. All right, well, let's just show you here. This is gonna be a little kind of dirty here, this switch here, because we're gonna show you our screen, our computer screen, so that we can switch over to a website in this particular case. I think, Dick, you're probably referring to the Terranex Mini here, which basically does the same thing as the Decimator 12G Cross. There were a few reasons I ended up going with the Decimator. First, I already owned one Decimator, and I was very happy with the quality it was producing. I love that it didn't have a fan. It is not rack mountable, but it is made to kind of mount on the back of a monitor on a VESA. Is that what they're called? I think they're called VESA mounts, but in any case, so that's the main idea. Also, you can see those converters. I don't think they do. Do they have HDMI I/O? There's HDMI to optical 12G, but they're all kind of more dedicated to a specific type of conversion. And the 12G Cross is very flexible. You can do a lot of different. It's a cross converter. It can go both ways, and it just works well. I was happy with it. I had firsthand experience with it. And so to me, that was kind of the main thing that came behind the decisions. Oh yeah, actually there is a Terranex Mini HDMI to SDI 12G. So in any case, that's the main thinking. Also, the Terranex Minis have fans in them. They're rack mountable, which is potentially advantageous. But the reason I didn't want something rack mountable, or that rack mountable is not important to me, is that I need these closer to the HDMI sources, and then I'll run the long cables, the SDI cables, to the switcher from there. So putting all of these into a rack didn't make sense. Hopefully that makes sense on why we did it. All right, next up from Andrew. This is kind of a long one, and I'll be honest, I think, Andrew, we need a little bit more information, but I have a proposal for you. So let me read through this and then kind of tell you what I suggest in terms of getting you some answers here. So I believe that I have followed the steps in order processing laid out by you in your Adobe Audition course, all within Audition, phase rotation, high-pass filter, breath control, single-band compressors, EQ, de-essing, loudness normalizing, etc. When editing in the individual waveforms, I have attenuated the non-speaker's track down to 50 dB and attenuated the speaker's breath noise down 10 dB, give or take, to maintain a natural background noise floor. Both tracks sound great individually, recorded at 44.1 kilohertz with a mix pre 3 SM7B and SM58 in a quiet and non-reflective space. The problem I'm experiencing is when I drag these tracks into multi-track editor and then play with them, I'm getting what sounds like electrical interference. Let me just pause there. Typically, I would do the attenuation, automating the faders up and down between the two people in the context of a multi-track session. I wouldn't do that individually. And the reason you need to do that in a multi-track session is because then you can hear what the results are. So I'm not sure at all what the electrical interference is. And this is where I have a proposal for you, rather than read the whole thing here. What I would suggest, if you're okay with it, I'd love to have you send maybe just a sample of those clips over. And on one of our upcoming Sound for Video sessions, we can actually walk through and show you how I would approach it and see if that kind of gets you, the answers that you're looking for. I don't know what would be causing that electrical interference sound. It could be that the two tracks are a little bit out of phase or something, although that's not usually an electrical buzzing sound. But we'd really need to see those individual tracks to see what that is. And then kind of also, we could also show you some workflow things and how I would approach that from a workflow perspective. So if you're not comfortable with that, that's fine too. If for whatever reason it's a project that you don't want the world to see yet, or it's not made for the world to see, and you'd rather just work on it, we can do that one-on-one. But in either case, if you just email me, curtis@learnlightandsound.com, and let's work out how you want to approach that. But either way, it'd be great, I think, for a larger audience to see that if we could. But if not, we can work on it kind of one-on-one as well. So, okay. Next up from Dan, I got and loved your course on Teachable with the audio aspects of the ATEM. I'm a newbie live streamer trying to use Ecamm Live. I'm coming to the conclusion that my 2015 MacBook Pro with its low specs isn't going to cut it. I get horrible video lag, etc. Can you spend any portion of this week's session on the minimum requirements needed in regards to laptop firepower? Oh, this is a tough one, Dan. Laptops, as I mentioned before, it's tough. They just don't necessarily have the firepower needed. Now, there are the new, I don't know if you're using Ecamm, so you're a Mac person. It could be that the new MacBook Pro with the M1 processor could do it. I don't know. I'm guessing it's going to be a lot more powerful than an Intel-based, your Intel-based 2015 MacBook Pro. But I haven't done a lot. I know that when I've tried to stream from, this is a 2016 15-inch MacBook Pro, I think. Is it 15 or was it 16? I don't know, whatever it was, 15-inch. Yeah. And it has a dedicated discrete video card. And it huffs and puffs. It just, even just with an HD stream. So I think the trick is going to be laptops. Laptops are their fans are going to kick on, and even if you can get something that runs smoothly, the fans are going to kick on, and now you have that added noise source. So I don't know. Maybe at some point we can try one of the new MacBook Pros with the M1 processor and see how that does. But I didn't find anything at the Ecamm site that really gave really clear hardware requirements in terms of specifications. All they said is you need a MacBook Pro, this version of Mac OS, and higher. You need a microphone. We'll actually switch over there. This will be kind of a dirty switch, and we'll show you the website and show you what it shows. Here we go. So basically a Mac. Yeah, there's your spec there. You need a Mac, a microphone, a compatible video camera, Mac OS 10.12, internet connection, upload speed of at least 1 megabits per second, 4 megabits per second is required for HD quality, a Mac with hardware accelerated video encoding, which is most Macs after 2010. To broadcast streaming services, you must have an account. And to host interview mode, we recommend an iMac or MacBook Pro manufactured in 2015 or newer, and at least 10 megabits per second internet connection. So, I mean, even then, you are running a MacBook Pro 2015 or newer. So I feel like those are not the best, that's not the best guidance in terms of what's required. So I really think that a desktop is the best way to go. Now, if you have to be mobile, that's a different issue. I guess you're just going to have to, I don't know. If anyone has the information in the chat, experience with specific models of computers, definitely let us know and let Dan know. That'll be really helpful. Next up from Mikhail. Have you used Noise Assist on the MixPre 362 for live streams in a noisy environment with AC, traffic, a lot of reverb, etc.? If so, how were the results? I have not used it on the MixPre 2, but I have on the 888. I believe it's basically the same on the 2. I don't know. I don't have the MixPre version of Noise Assist, but let Let me actually ask the follow-up question and then answer them both together. Have you noticed any difference in the noise reduction when using a condenser mic versus dynamic mic when using noise assist? What I have noticed with noise assist is that for the best performance, you have the close mic. It doesn't matter what kind of microphone it is, whether it's dynamic or condenser, but you have to be close to it. And that's just a plain old signal to noise ratio, and that's when it works best, when you're close mic'd. If you're not close mic'd, I feel like, if you're booming a mic even, it can be it'll just kind of kick in and out. And I haven't found it to be as awesome for that. But if you're close mic'd, it's pretty amazing what it can do. And in that case, just 2 or 3 dB is really all I generally need. So that's been my experience with it. I haven't used it specifically in live streams, and we could be using it here, but we're not. Normally, I don't have this closet open and we don't have all that noise coming in, so it's not usually an issue. But I think if you're going to close mic, that's when you're going to get the biggest difference. Next up from Steve, I have a question on my weekly church live stream. This is the question that we saw in the chat here just a little bit from Steve. They finally got me the 3.5 millimeter TRS to XLR adapters so I can feed my stereo mix from my console to their Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro. My thoughts were to hardpan mic 1 to left and mic 2 to right. Set the ATEM gains to -45, my comps to a light 2-to-1, and at -12, and sounded fine in the cans, but when we did a live test, there was a distinct slapback type echo. I double-checked my routing on my mixer, and all was well there. I muted mic 2 and put mic 1 on the ATEM to center and no delay on the line feed, which is on YouTube. Are there any special hidden under the hood setting on the ATEM to make the mic inputs 1 and 2 into a proper stereo mic, or do you think YouTube is the issue? I don't think YouTube is the issue. I think the ATEM is what's happening here. It's important, I think, to realize that the 2 inputs on the ATEM Mini are actually stereo inputs. So if you can get a dual XLR to 3.5 millimeter feed into one of the ATEM Mini's inputs, switch the input to line level, because then you wouldn't have to futz around, dropping the gain to -45 while it's set at mic level. Then I think you're going to be in a good spot there. I don't know why you're getting any sort of slapback. It sounds like maybe there is a delay. If we go, can you switch back over to this? Oh no, that we can't show it here because this is the bigger switcher. Never mind. But in the ATEM control software, you're going to want to go into the settings and make sure that the inputs are set to line level. You also want to go on the audio tab and make sure they haven't applied a delay there. They may have, and they just didn't realize it. So that might be why you're getting that delay. So I would turn that delay off on both of those, or at least make them the same. And hopefully that gets you where you need to go. You might want to use a DI between the two of them well, no, you don't need to use a DI. They're not balanced inputs on the ATEM. Never mind on that. But if you can get your stereo left and right into a single ATEM Mini Pro or ATEM Mini input, then I think you'll be in better shape. Okay, I think that's all the questions we had there. Did we have any more come up in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, let's go back over to that. So I'll switch us over to, let's go to, back to cam 1 there. And we will see about bringing up some chat stuff here. Okay, first up, have you switched from iMac to Mac Pro? Yes. Next. Bad timing on a purchase, right? Apple Silicon's here now and I'm on Intel. Oh well, it's doing a good job for us. I bought my first Electrosonics wireless UCR 211 with my UM200C. Any tips for setting up? I have not used any of the Electros, so no. But if you didn't catch our session a few weeks ago with Michael Wynn on wireless, I would recommend taking a look at that. In our course, Michael will run through some of that. When we do the wireless course, it'll be out hopefully start of the new year sometime. So I don't have any specifics for you there, but definitely stick around for more info on that. Since Isotope Pro plugins can be expensive, do you think the Isotope Elements can be a good addition to Audition? Yes, definitely. Although Audition has most of what Isotope Elements offers, I'm trying to think here if there's anything that Isotope offers. I mean, the processing is really, really good. I think that they've improved the processing in Adobe Audition's stock plugins as well. But yeah, the holiday savings on the Isotope elements, I think, is definitely worth it. I think you can often find it for $35 or something like that. Definitely worth every last penny of that. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth it. Even just the denoiser alone is worth it, probably. It's so simple to use, and it works so beautifully. All right, next up from Shoji Productions. Is there an inexpensive hardware option to add an ATEM Mini that allows hardware streaming to YouTube and Facebook? Not to the original ATEM Mini, I don't believe so. I'm not aware of an inexpensive hardware encoder, but you know, if you sold your ATEM Mini and you bought an ATEM Mini Pro, then you would have that. But I don't think there's anything less than the $300 difference between the ATEM Mini and the ATEM Mini Pro that is a dedicated hardware encoder that I'm aware of. Unless you have a really old PC that's pretty decently spec'd, you could use that. What kind of lav were you using? That was a Shure TLM... Shure Twinplex TL48. It's right here. I have it kind of taped in right now, but yeah, that's a Shure Twinplex. I think it works pretty nicely for almost all of the tasks I have. It's probably the first lav I usually go to when I'm miking someone up. Doesn't fit everybody's voice, but almost everybody's voice. It's a nice sound. All right, from Michael, who did you use for your acoustic panels and acoustic design for your space? That was GIK Acoustics. They're based in Atlanta, Georgia. And when you are going to design a room for mixing, they'll assign you an acoustician. And what you do is if you can, you take some measurements in your room. So you can Behringer makes a little measurement microphone, and you can use Room EQ Wizard to kind of take some measurements in your room, plus take some pictures, plus... That's gotten louder, hasn't it? Plus take pictures of the room, plus give them all the specs in terms of the ceiling height, where you're planning to have things situated in the room, and they'll help you design the acoustic plan for that. For the MixPre 2 series, what are the maximum SD card size you can use with UHS-2? Also, it says don't use micro to SD. Does this induce errors, or will it not work? I don't know off the top of my head. Let me just see if I can look that up really quickly. I'm just going to Google, to be honest. I'm going to go to the Sound Devices website and go to the support page. You know what? To be honest, I use 16 and 32 gigabyte cards, and you can record an entire production day on those. I think the interesting thing that I've seen a lot of times is that I've seen people try to buy these really fast, really expensive, really high capacity cards for their audio recorders, and a lot of times they run into issues with them. So I would actually just go with the SanDisk. They're like $15 to $25, 16 and 32 gigabyte cards, or anything that Sound Devices has on their. They maintain a specific list of cards that they have actually tested and that work with their gear. And so I would stick with one of those. So that would be my first thought. I'm just looking here. They have, if you go to the main support page for Sound Devices, scroll down, there's an approved media list, and they have all the approved media for the different series. So there's a separate one for MixPre 2 series. All of the cards that are on the approved list, the largest one is 128 gigabytes. And again, like I said, they have their own branded cards that they have basically approved. Actually, they've updated this since I last looked at it. They do have some V90 cards, actually. And they have some UHS-2 cards. So definitely, yeah, check that out. Check that list out and probably stick close to those. I've been using just the regular old SanDisk Extremes. Those are on the list as well, but I've been using the 16 and 32 gigabyte sizes, and I have had no issues whatsoever with them. So our switcher is evidently getting hot because it's making more noise now. The fan kicked into high gear. Don't know if you guys can hear that.
We're past time.
We're past time. Okay, well, thank you to everyone that joined us today. I hope that the behind the scenes was helpful to you in some way, that you were able to kind of glean some useful information from that. Again, I hesitate to do those things because people will accuse me of flexing, and that's not my goal. My goal is really, here are lessons I've learned in the process where I've worked on things. So hopefully it was useful for you. We will, we have some super chats. Thank you, people, for the super chats. So a bunch of people. I see one from Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. It's good to hear from you as well. Antonio, thank you. And then also from Rob, thanks so much. And then also from Camille. So thanks, everyone, for your support. Get out there and make some great sound, and we will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.